Families of victims wrote an open letter to the Prime Minister today calling for a federal royal commission. Do you believe there should be a federal royal commission for you to answer this question?
Look, we're going to have a Royal Commission in New South Wales. We think it's absolutely important for our state to do that. There are questions that we don't have answers to, and we need to do everything possible to provide that to the community for a couple of reasons, so that there's up-to-date information, the families know how this happened, the community knows how this happened, and also so that we can learn from it. I mean, I'm responsible for a lot in New South Wales. We have taken responsibility for a lot that's happening here at the moment. You'll have to direct your questions to the federal government about it.
The Royal Commission can't compel intelligence agencies to give evidence, doesn't have jurisdictions in other states, has limited powers. Don't you think we need those hefty powers?
I'm told and I'm advised that there's ways to ensure that state-based commission can get access to other jurisdictions and other heads of agencies, and I would expect that to happen.
Is the Prime Minister listening to the families?
Well, look, I can't speak for the families and I can't speak for another level of government. Obviously, I've got my plate full. We are currently looking at taking action at everything from hate preachers in our community to providing expert counselling and help for the local community, as well as ensuring that Jewish life can return to a place like New South Wales, and that might mean changes to security, to CSG, to even working with the Commonwealth for the extraordinary step of an army presence on our streets, particularly as Operation Shelter begins to change in its operation and outlook. We need to make sure that the local community's safe, and that's my responsibility. We're not shirking it. We know it's a huge, I mean, this is the worst terrorism event that's affected our state and our country ever, and it requires a comprehensive response. And every day we're going to announce something new to ensure that we keep the community safe. Look, I think we've all got a responsibility here, a responsibility to ensure that it doesn't happen again.
Premier, CSG is going to be armed in the future. Is there other communities that might need this sort of protection as well? Is it just this particular community organisation that you want to arm? And what checks will you be doing to make sure these people are sufficiently qualified?
Well, look, I haven't made a final decision about that yet, but, and I want to make this clear, I have spoken to so many members of the Jewish community in the last week who don't feel safe. They don't feel safe celebrating their religion. They don't feel safe getting together as a community. And we cannot have a situation where the solution to this horrible terrorism event is to have the Jewish community say, well, we can only exist and celebrate our faith behind big walls. And if in the end, the safest way of being an extreme deterrent to someone committing this offence again, or even alternatively, having an elderly Holocaust survivor or someone who's got a young family from the Jewish community deciding that they can go back to Hanukkah by the sea, is having armed guards, then I think that's a small price to pay. Now, there's a process that we have to go through with the Jewish Board of Deputies. They call it a de-escalation protocol. But it's important to note that for static locations like synagogues and Jewish schools, in many cases the CSG is already armed. So it will be the situation, I believe it would be necessary to have a situation where for an event like Hanukkah by the Sea, they're armed as well. And I don't think that we can really fulfil our promise to restore Jewish life to New South Wales unless we can say hand on heart that the security for those things has fundamentally changed. I know that people are against this. I know that there's some people in the media today who say we've made the wrong decision here or we're making the wrong decision. But I firmly believe that things need to change. We can't do anything about yesterday other than learn from it, but I'm determined to do that.
Would that require legislation?
Look, in the first instance, yes, of course. But this is in working in conjunction with the Jewish Board of Deputies and the Jewish community. So look, at the moment, Operation Shelter is one of the largest police operations the state has ever seen. But I don't want, once the media goes and it's not on the front page of the newspapers anymore, and it's not immediately front of mind for the majority of citizens in New South Wales, for this just to go. and no longer be front and centre. The security for our community is the most important responsibility of any government, and the truth of the matter is that we failed in that on the 14th of December, and I'm not going to make the same mistake twice.
Premier, on hate breaches, how many hate breaches have been looked into by the New South Wales Police under the investigations under the new powers? And just for the Royal Commission, do you have a rough timeline for either when that's going to start or when that's going to, like, what the reporting period will be so families can get answers?
Yeah. Look, in the second part of the question first, we're working with our agencies as well as the Jewish community about terms of reference and an appropriate commissioner. So, you know, I'd be happy to have it up and running as soon as possible, but I don't want to, in effect, lay down terms of reference without having appropriate consultation with the community, particularly the community that's been affected by it. As I've said previously, any investigation must include an examination of anti-Semitism, particularly over the last 2 years. An inquiry can't be absent that. We need to know how this has escalated from comments or chants at a rally, escalating all the way to violent actions on the beach in Bondi. So that requires careful terms of reference. We've started some initial conversations, for example, with the Jewish Board of Deputies, but that's a longer process. The short answer is I don't have a date yet. As soon as possible. Look, in relation to hate preachers, I'm not going to give a running commentary about it, other than to say we anticipate legislation as soon as possible where if a prayer hall is operating without consent, that it can be closed and shuttered as soon as possible. I want it to be as easy as turning off a light, and that means that switching off the utilities, the water, the electricity must be an option available to authorities, because we cannot have centres that are operating illegally out there in the community, in some cases spreading hate or putting hate into the hearts of young people. It can't be tolerated. We need to draw a line in the sand. We're going to make sure that we've got the tools to do that.
On that, with the definition of hate preachers, are we talking about those preaching anti-Semitism and racism, or is this going to LGBT issues?
No, we're talking about people who are in breach of the law. We have moved legislation in New South Wales that makes it an offence to preach this hate or vilify members of the community on the basis of race, and we want to be in a situation where that's enforced. So if that happens and you're subject to an offence, and we know that there's some preachers that are proven racists, the courts have found that, we need to be in a situation where they're not able to spread or disseminate that hatred in our community.
Premier, does bringing in the Army mean the New South Wales Police and AFP are badly under-resourced?
No, it doesn't, but I'm conscious of the fact that the security needs for this community doesn't stop the minute this isn't on the front pages of the newspapers. This will be the real pressure for us, and the real test for us will be 1 year from now, 5 years from now, 15 years from now, when the Jewish community feels safe in their community. And I know that this means fundamental changes, but that's why we are looking at arming the CSG for events like Hanukkah in the park. That's why we want to speak with the Commonwealth about deploying the Army, particularly as Operation Shelter moves into a new phase.
So would that be something that's permanent or for a specific period of time?
Look, you got to give me the opportunity to have those conversations. But the security protocols and resources are going to have to change in Sydney. And they've changed in Rome, and they've changed in Paris, and they're going to have to change here. I mean, anyone who's suggesting that we can just have the same regime, the same process that we had in place on December the 13th is wrong. Those days are over. Yeah, I believe we can. I mean, that's been the question. Can you run a royal commission at the same time as a criminal trial? A criminal trial is incredibly important. That's how we're going to get justice for the victims and their families and the community. But I think that we can get a discerning judge who has understanding and experience about criminal procedures to give us as many of the answers as possible in as short a period of time as possible.
From the immediate emergency response, why is it the lead agencies didn't request firefighters to come to the scene when they have very advanced trauma kits and life-saving equipment?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, the short answer is I don't know. I mean, it would have been an operational decision, but there was 123 paramedics on site reasonably quickly. There were a lot of lessons to be learned from the Bondi Junction attack, and my understanding is that, at least the briefings that I've got, is that they were able to be implemented here. Tragically, I mean, we never want to see it, but paramedics were able to deploy quickly and get to major trauma hospitals quickly. The big question was around getting access to the site, so police being able to say to paramedics, you're clear to go in, and having a chain of command so that paramedics weren't on the outskirts of the crime scene for longer than they needed to be. My understanding is that worked well. If it subsequently proves to be the case that it wasn't, then we'll learn the lessons. The second point here is there wasn't a major incident after the 14th of December on that night, but there could have been. And in many cases, you have to be in a situation where you've got enough resources in place if the unimaginable happens. If the unimaginable happens.
At the time, though, generally when there's a live bomb threat, the fire service does turn up.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, I'm just not in a position to know. But if we find out about it, of course, we'll have more to say.
Is the terrorism risk level so high to warrant the army? And if so, why hasn't the level been moved up?
Well, look, it has been moved up. I think ASIO is responsible for the threat levels. And, I mean, yeah, it's been moved up. Okay.
On New Year's Eve, are we expecting lower crowd numbers this year?
Look, I hope not. You know, I can understand there's a natural human instinct to say, I'm concerned about what's happened. I'm concerned. Everyone would be, but we have to show defiance to these terrorists. We have to genuinely thumb our nose at it. I mean, in their perverted ideology, they would want people to stay home and not spend time with their family and friends. They would want people to crawl up in a ball and not live their life. The purpose of the terrorism is actually to say to the community in Bondi and New South Wales, we don't want you to live your life. And I think there's a good opportunity for parents and members of the community to show that they're not going to be cowed or intimidated by terrorists, and that they will celebrate with their family and friends. Now, that means that we have to have a massive police presence. We need to have huge security available on the scene during New Year's Eve celebrations. And yes, in many cases, it'll be confronting for members of the community to see police with big firearms and machine guns, which aren't normally the case on Sydney streets. But I don't make any apology for that. We want people to be safe in our community, but we want them to live their lives. And I think our ambition here is to be stronger at the broken places. This has been very damaging for the Bondi community, there's no doubt about it. But it's a tough, resilient community. If we can make them whole and ensure that they come through this stronger, well, as awful and as evil as those actions have been, there might be some good out of it too.
On those long-arm guns, not all officers are able to use those. So you're talking about bringing in specialist officers and also coming in by how much?
Yeah, we'll be doing a media conference with the police commissioner. I don't think it's tomorrow, I think it's the day after, where we explain some of the extraordinary powers that police will have on the night. But they're not going to be mucking around.
Premier, talking about powers, earlier you said that this state recognition will have powers to retrieve information from other jurisdictions. Now, the Albanese government has previously said that they're not going to do a royal commission because it will get in the way of those two other investigations. How will yours not?
Look, I mean, I can't speak for them. You're going to have to direct your questions to them, other than I've been told and I expect that any Royal Commission from New South Wales will have access to agencies, any agency, any person, any official, anyone they need to speak to get to the answers. All right, I'm going to have to keep rolling. Thanks, everybody.
Oh, no, to be clear, the hub's been open, I think, for about a week and a half. We started at the north.
That was the New South Wales Premier Chris Minns speaking in Bondi alongside Waverley Mayor Will Namesh on the establishment of the Bondi Hub.